So welcome to week 4 of Operations Management course. In this week, we will be seeing the product design aspect of it. So the last 2 weeks we have been spending on introducing operations management, as well as studying about the various strategies that can be followed by the companies. So these are the various operation management decisions which will come up. So the next week we will be starting with quality management. So as I said, the focus for this particular week is the design of goods and services. Towards the end of today's discussion, I will be introducing what's called as a decision table or a decision tree, which we will be working during our lecture hours. So from this chapter, the numerical part of it is the decision table or decision tree. So the various learning objectives of this particular chapter are as follows. First, we will explain the different aspects involved in designing a goods or a service. We will also introduce the various lean philosophies that can be followed in the design of new products or services. And towards the end of it, we will be learning about the decision trees to come up with certain product management decision or product designing situations wherein we will be encountered with a make or buy sort of a situation. So before jumping on to this particular thing, I just want to say in industry, this particular thing is generally referred to as NPD or new product development. So be it in service industry or in a goods industry, we generally call it as NPD or new product development. So there are various aspects in this particular thing, but in our course, we are just giving you an introduction to this particular topic. We are not going very much in depth into the various aspects of it, but we are just introducing you to the various concepts involved in the design of goods and services. So to start with, when we are thinking about a product design, what are the various aspects that we need to consider when we are coming up with a new design? So the picture which is shown here, say for example, the green colored bike, which we have finally reached, but how do we know that that's the type of bike that has to be designed by my company? So there should be various things that should be looked at. To start with, we want to always develop, our product strategy should always be developed and implemented in such a way that it is connected to the market demands for sure, and it is satisfying our core, so the core competitive advantage that we are going to create because of this particular new product. So the product which you are making, there should be a demand for that particular product. At the same time, that's what we are going to see. It should be fundamental to the organizational strategy. So last week we studied about, see, differentiation. We studied about the cost leadership or the response strategy. So understand the company where you are working, what's the strategy that your company is following. So the product strategy should be derived from that particular organizational strategy. So if you are not connected, if the product strategy is not connected to the organizational strategy, then you might not be able to deliver that particular product. So this is very important. So the role of an operations manager or operations engineer is to design a system that helps to develop new products and introduce the new products successfully. So always remember this line of inputs, process, and outputs. So that's what we always define as operations management. So we need to make sure that we are getting the right set of inputs and we are able to do certain things within our factory or within our office so that the new product gets developed. Once a new product gets developed, it is important for us to make sure that output reaches the market on time. So that's the role of an operations management manager in a new product development situation. So it's also important to understand. So last week we just had a look at the PLC, which is the product life cycle, just the 4 different phases in PLC. So it's always important to understand, are you going to come up with a really new product? Are you really introducing a new product in the market? Or you have a particular product, say for example mobile phone, which is there, which is in a certain stage, say for example it's a maturity stage. So are you trying to come up with a really new product in itself, or are you planning to make some slight modification on the existing product, and then because the product has already reached a particular maturity stage, so and then trying to sell it? So the example could be, say instead of say saying that I added a particular software which increases the say antivirus, the capability of that particular mobile phone, or did I change the upgraded the software? I didn't do anything much, but say for example such slight modifications which I make if the product is already in the maturity stage of your business. So this is important. So when we say that I am trying to design a new product, it is important to look for the various aspects. So people say that the first thing that you should always look for is the functionality of that particular product. So what is it that I'm trying to develop? What's the purpose of this particular product? So if I'm developing a product which is not really having any purpose with the customer, the chances are really high that it will not work. What's the fashion as in what's the aesthetic component involved in that particular thing? Am I going to have a particular color to that particular product? How do I ensure that the company's identity gets inserted on that particular product? So look at the Apple phone, you will be having the Apple thing on the back side of it. So how am I going to ensure my logo, my style is imbibed on this particular thing? The same is the case with what's going to be my customers' requirements. How am I going to understand the requirements of my customer? Because I'm developing a new product, I really don't know whether the customer will be accepting my product. So once I do that particular thing, how am I going to produce the product? Am I going to create a single item? Am I going to create a batch process, or am I using a continuous method? So this process strategies we will study later on, but it is important to understand how am I going to manufacture this particular thing so that it's available to the customer. What's going to be the cost of it? What are the different materials that I'm going to use? So there is a lot of aspects involved in the product design. It's not just the creative component involved. Definitely there's a creative element to any new product, but it's not just the creative component, but so many questions which are not. So for example, which when you're trying to develop a new product, so many questions have to be asked, and then the product has to be developed. There's the question of say for example, whether there's a recycling method which is efficiently, can I recycle that particular product, or can I, if there's some problem with this, how do I get back that particular material from the customer? So there could be thousands of questions. So that's what I said, the product design as such is not a very easy thing. So when you're speaking about an NPD or a new product development, it can be very complicated, though we are not studying all the things in this chapter. So to give you a perspective of the new product development, so see this particular situation. So we have seen the product life cycle with 4 different stages. So we are pretty sure that the sales is going to be lower at the starting stage of it. At the introduction phase, it's going to be lower. But as you move towards the maturity or towards the growth, this is the stage where your sales revenue is going to be really high. But then the question is, what about the cost of development? So there's a cost involved in developing the new product, which is really high at the introduction phase. So the blue color line typically represents how the cost of the development process looks like, the maximum happening somewhere in the introduction phase. So the next question is, my revenues are going to be higher only in the maturity phase. So I am going to incur, so this is the bottom graph which is shown here. So you see that there is no profit that I'm going to make till a particular point in time. Say for example, at this particular point in time, That's when, say for example, at this point, that's when my profit starts building up. So till that point in time, my profit has been zero. So if I want to make some profit in my thing, if I'm selling only, say, the products, say 100 units or 1000 units of new mobile phone has been sold, the cost will be significantly higher than the revenue. So you will be in a loss. So this is very important, since you are in, say for example, having a knowledge of accounting things. So this is something which has to be kept in mind. So same way, when you are trying to come up with your recommendations for your case study, keep this aspect in mind. And the revenues are going to be significantly lower at the initial phases. As a result, the product will always be in a loss. So that's what is written here. So it takes time to recoup the investment. Now, what's more difficult here is, say, the life cycle of a particular product. So if the life cycle of a product is, say, 5 years, that's the life this particular product is going to last. So that used to be the case, at least say 20 years back. So products used to stay in market, or even 10 years back, say the product used to stay in market for a longer period of time. So it is always possible. So there was always a motivation for companies to do the thing. So even if something goes wrong in the initial development phases, it's always possible to recoup it, because there's a the demand pattern is really like on a longer term. But these days, think of a mobile phone. The mobile phone trends, or the same is the case with automobiles, they keep on changing. So as a result, an item which was made, say mobile phone which was developed at the end of 2019, so it's less than, say, 18 months old, is considered as an old product. It's not really a new product. So the lifetime has shortened. It has become very small. As a result, the technology, the new products that you have to come up, there is absolutely no scope for you to make mistakes in this particular situation. So that's a technique which we normally see, which is called as a product by value. So it's a question of, how do I decide which product should I start developing, or should I be focusing on? So if I have multiple options, should I be focusing on this product, or should I be focusing on the other product? So this is important. That's why we normally use what's called as product by value classification. What we do is, so this is the example of a, say, furniture, a company which manufactures the different types of furniture. So it's important. It has different categories, say love seat or armchair, recliner. There are different categories of products that it can make. So it's important to first list down the products in the descending order of the individual contribution. So if you have, say, 4 things, try to sort them out in terms of their contribution. Say for example, annual contribution, which one is the maximum? Now, so first list down in the descending order. Finally, list the total annual dollar contribution of that particular product. So this helps the management to get a sense of it. Say for example, in this particular case, say the love seat, or say the recliner, and let's compare these two products, love seat versus recliner. Recliner, when I try to sell a particular recliner, I can make a contribution is of around $136, and its contribution yearly is going to be 50,000. But if I am selling the love seat, so it's around $102. So but its contribution is significantly lower than that of the recliner. So should I be focusing first on love seat modification, or should I be focusing on recliner? So this is a question which the management can always ask and try to come up with solutions. So which one should you focus on? Now, it's very important. So as I was trying to say, see this particular example, when you're trying to come up with a new product, it's important that you understand your customer very correctly. See the changes which are happening in the economy. So if the economy is going through a downside of it, just like now, if you're trying to develop a mobile phone which is, say, costing $5,000, the chances of that mobile phone being sold is really lower. So understand the scenarios, understand the changes happening in the market. What's the change happening with respect to the technology? So the internet, say 4G or 5G is now coming in. So what's the change which is happening to my technology? Is there issues with respect to the political things, with respect to the legal aspects, and so on? So whenever you are trying to develop a new product, all these aspects have to be kept in mind. And the last thing, which is most important, is it aligning to your organizational capability? What it means is, if Apple is developing if Apple is developing a new product, Apple's capability is having, say, high skilled manpower, but not necessarily on a product, not necessarily on the supply chain, say, for example. So if Apple is developing a product which is very cheap, say of $100, so it's the new mobile phone, it becomes really tricky for Apple to survive. So it's important that it aligns with its organizational strengths. So it's important to understand why it is so important to develop new products. To give a sense of it, if you are an industry leader, it's just a thumb rule. Around 50% of your sales will be from the new products. If you are a company which is not accepting the newer products, if you're not developing the newer products, the chances are high that you will be kicked out of your position. You will be no longer be the industry leader. Now, there are various aspects which are important when you're trying to come up with a new product development. So as I said, there are various things. You look for the customer requirements, you look for the aesthetics of it, you look for the supplier, you look for various aspects of it, but generally this is what we represent, we normally specify in terms of the product development. First is to come up with the ideas. So when someone is asking to develop a new product, try to look for the various ideas. So the ideas, there is no shortage of ideas. You will get always idea. Try to find out from that which of those ideas are workable. Do you have a capability to convert those ideas into useful products? So if you come up with, say, if you're working in a company, say Walmart, if you're coming up with something which is totally outside the domain of testing, idea is good, but it may not be possible to implement because we don't have the ability to incorporate it. Now, once you identify that particular thing, so these stages are very important, though we are just reading it here. First is to identify what's the requirement for the customer. See, if I'm trying to develop a new pen, what is it the customer is currently facing? What are the issues that the customer is facing with respect to the existing pen? And what's going to be the requirement if I'm coming up with a really new product, say the new type of a pen, if I'm trying to launch in the market, what is important? Now, once you understand the different requirements of your customer, it's important to convert the requirements into what's called as functional specification. Functional specification basically means the customer says that, for example, customer might say it has to be writing at this way. I should be able to write in any orientation. Say, for example, that's a functional requirement. The other functional requirement could be let's say if I can write with, if I'm just trying to say something and this thing can, even if I hold like this, it should be able to write properly. So there could be multiple aspects which can come up from the product. So in a pen, it may not be so easy to explain, but if you're speaking about a new type of mobile phone that you're planning to launch, which helps the old, say the people above, say 70 years old, to use it very effectively. If that's the mobile phone which you're trying to launch, then you may have to come up with some specifications saying it should be able to understand the voice very clearly. It may be able to it should be able to understand the type of writing. So it may be difficult. So once you get a little bit old, it might be difficult to use the fingers. There could be problems in using it. So the phone which you are developing should be capable of handling it. So those are all functional specification. From the functional specification, it's important to understand what is the specification of the product. When we say specification of the product, what we mean is, if it's a pen, it should say what's the length of it, what's the size of it, what's the thickness of this particular nib, and so on. Then you do a particular review whether your design that you have come up with, is it good enough. If it is good, what we do is we develop some prototype and then launch in a market, in a small portion of the market, which we call as a test market. Once you do that particular, if things are looking good, if things are pretty much good, then you launch in a really, let's say you introduce, that's what your PLC starts, then you introduce the market, then try to understand how the process works. Based on the feedback, you might make some changes to the product and then relaunch that particular thing. So what we say here is looks very easy. This process can be really long. Sometimes in the case of companies, it can be as long as say 18 months, or it can be as long as even 2 years, 3 years as well. Because they are trying to get all the customer requirements correct. They are trying to convert the requirements to the correct specification, correct product specification, selecting the right test market, and so on. So this is a very effective tool which we call as the QFD. Though I'm not solving this particular thing in the class, I want all of you to read it from the textbook, because this is an effective way that helps you to understand how I develop a new product. To understand this particular picture, it's called as a house of quality, because say for example, first you try to gather all the customer inputs here. So what's the customer looking for? What's the customer's wants? Now based on say the particular different wants, give a priority to the different customer requirements. Then you try to understand what's it that the competitor is currently providing. Now, once you understand the requirements, once you understand what's your competition's thing, it's important to estimate whether you have the capability to develop it. How to satisfy the customer wants? Do I have the capability to satisfy the customer's wants? Do I need something specific to do to satisfy the customer wants, and so on? So this is a very powerful method. Please read from the textbook the QFD, or quality function deployment. So going further, in an NPD, or NPD is a new product development organizational structure. So historically, let's say 20 years back, people used to work separately. So NPD used to happen in the research and development wing, and different departments used to work differently, distinctly. And there used to be what's called as a product champion, who used to be like the product manager, who sort of drives this particular product and tries to connect with the various departments involved. But the issue is this method is no longer working, specifically in the last, ever since the pandemic has started. People aren't working, many are working from home. So as a result, it is very important that the NPD has become very difficult to achieve, because people are in different locations. When you're trying to do the collaboration over internet, coming up with ideas, it's very important that you have a very strong product champion who understands, who takes everyone into consideration and all those things. This is very important. So there could be multiple issues which you may encounter when you're designing a new product. One of them is what's called as a robust design. Whether your design is good enough to fit for any type of products, or is the design having any issues. The second thought process which normally comes up is called as a modular design. Modular design, the best example is that of a computer. So for example, if you have designed, say, your CPU as a single product, if as a single piece, if there is something wrong with a small component in your CPU, you may have to throw away your computer processing, the central processing unit. You have to throw away the CPU. So what you might go for is, that's what is done in most cases, you have multiple components inside the CPU. So if one item is not working, you really do not have to throw away the full thing, but you can replace the component that's not working. and then replace it with another thing. The same is the case with any car, right? When you design a car, you always design as different components. So if there is something which is not working, that can be replaced. That's called as a modular design. Now, there could be different methods of designing the things. One is using the computer aided design, CAD softwares, using the CAM softwares, and so on. So these days, another thing which is very popular is how well VR technology is being used, and whether the design which you have made is having the real value to it, and whether it is environmentally friendly. So these very different aspects will come into picture when you are designing a new product. So one example which is shown here is how do you redesign a particular product. Say a specific product, if you see in here, there was a nut and bolt sort of a setting which was there. You had two different components connected, and then you were selling it, say, 350. Now the same item can be sold at 80 cents. If you see in here, the same functionality is still there. You replaced this thing with, say, for example, you totally replaced. There is no two components now. It's a single piece coming in here, and then it's being welded, or this is being kept here, so that what has happened is a rivet. That's what we call it. So what you have done is, over a period of time, the same functionality which was available at, say, 350 is currently available at 80 cents. So this way you have added value to your customer. Now, we have been speaking specifically about the product designs with respect to the goods, but service aspects can, as usual, can become very difficult, because it always involves, it always requires a certain amount of customization. So we have seen that's why the productivities are going to be lesser. Now, when you are trying to create a service industry, take food as an example. In a restaurant, the one way of doing it is what we call as a delay the customization. What it means is, you go to a restaurant and then you say that I want a food which is less spicy, or you say that I want more spicy items. That's what is called as a delaying the customization. So the person taking order from you, he ensures that he is providing the item which is as per your requirement. He's not giving a standard item to you. So this is a service. This is one way of looking a new product in terms of the service. The second concept is what we call as a modularization. What basically it means is the thing what you see in the case of Tim Hortons. You keep things in terms of modules, so that there is no confusion, there is no ambiguity in terms of if someone is asking for a, say, muffin, or if someone else is asking for something else. It's always easy for strawberry muffin or gingerbread muffin. It's always possible for you to take that particular item and give it. And the same is the case with the other issue which can happen in this case is, you ask for a black coffee or you ask for double. So the way in which things are being kept is the milk, the cream is kept separately, which can be added to the black coffee so that it can be provided to the customer. So that's kept in modules. Instead of creating different products like black coffee, milk coffee, like having lots of milk coffees, instead of creating differences, they just have only black coffee, and the other things are being added as per, say, the need of the customer. So this is one aspect which can be done. The same is the sugar, how much of sugar you need, for example. The same is the case. The other way of doing it is to reduce the customer. That you can see in McDonald's is, if you want to get, say, for example, Pepsi or Coke, what's given is, you're given a cup, and then you can go and select and take that particular item. So this is a way of reducing unnecessary confusion with the customer, provide the customer the chance to select what he wants through automation. Now, some of the important things which can happen, which is very important in case of a service industry, there are certain aspects which are called as the experience detractors. There are certain expectations which the customers do have, and there are certain ways in which things can be made very, very effective. So to start with, if you're giving a phone call to a call center, you had some issue with your credit card, you're trying to call the customer care there. So if you had to wait for a long time, or sometimes it do happen, they say that please hold the call, I'm going to transfer the call to the other person. So there is going to be a dissatisfaction which happens if you are asked to wait for a longer time. Or it's also possible that instead of talking to a person, it's possible that you spoke to a computer. You may not feel so comfortable doing that particular issue. Now, these aspects which you may encounter in a service industry can create dissatisfaction to the customer. Now, how can you enhance that particular thing? So this is an important aspect which is mentioned here. So because of it, you may still continue to use, but you will be a dissatisfied customer. So these are the various aspects which we are discussing with respect to your service as well as your product designs. Now, what we are going to discuss now is what's called as your decision trees. So this is just an example from your textbook. I just wanted to give you a quick insight on how you decide things based on a decision tree. We will be solving more questions in the class. So to give you an example of this, so there's a company called as Silicon Inc., which is thinking of developing a new microprocessor, new product. Now for developing this new product, you have to either purchase a sophisticated system, CAD system, or the second option is hire and train several additional engineers. So one is to hire additional engineer or to purchase the software system. So there are two options. The question is, which one should I go for? The reason is it's a new product. So the market for this product can be either favorable or it's totally unfavorable. So which you do not know at the beginning, but you know that it can be either favorable or unfavorable. Now, there is a third option that this company can decide of not developing any new product. So there are three options which are given. One option is do not select, do not make any new product. Option 2 is make new product, but when you are making a new product, you purchase the CAD software. Third option is make the new product, but hire new engineers. So there are three options in front of this company. Which one is better? Now, what's mentioned here is you are given with if the market conditions are good, how much will be your revenue? If the market condition is not good, how much will be your revenue? It's also mentioning how much will be your the software is going to cost 500,000, whereas hiring the engineer might be 375,000. So it might just look like, say, if you ask me, it might, with this statement, it looks to me that it may be better to go with engineers because the cost is lesser. But now the point is, if I have the CAD software, my manufacturing cost will reduce. So the increasing the labor is definitely cheaper initially because hiring them is not so costly, but it's not reducing my manufacturing cost. So my question is, should I be going ahead with this or not? Now now it's also given the probability that you will be having a favorable acceptance is 0.4. and 0.6. So this is a typical question which comes up in operations management. You may decide to go with a new product, but then what's the method of going ahead? So these types of problems are solved using decision trees. So I'll just show the solution and read out the way of doing it, but we'll solve more questions in the class. So as you see here, in a decision tree, the first thing is you create a square box to represent the various decisions that you're looking for. So the first option is you are doing nothing. The second option is hire and train engineers. The third is to purchase the CAD software. So you have three different options in front of you. Now, which you normally represent in terms of a circle. So if you are going for the different outcomes of this decision, this is the circle which you'll be putting. So a square is for representing a decision box. that a circle represents the various alternatives which are allowed. So let's try to understand a simple case here. It was told that the sales will be higher. The probability of having favorable market is 0.4 and that of your low sales is 0.6. So what you're basically doing is you're trying to find out how much will be my revenue, how much will be my manufacturing cost, and what's the cost of my CAD software. The same thing I'm going to do here. What's my revenue, what's my manufacturing cost, and my software. So I get these two numbers, which is say the net value when the sales are higher and the net value when I having a low sales. So to get a sense of the total, the worth of this decision, which we call as an EMV or expected monetary value, what we do is 0.4 times this number plus 0.6 times minus 20,000. This is what we do, which gives me 388,000. So what it means is, if I am purchasing the CAD software, I can expect it to make around $388,000 as that's my returns. That's my expected monetary value. This is a value which I can get. If I'm hiring and training the engineers, if we do the same way, the expected returns for me is 365. If I'm doing nothing, my expected return is $0. So logically, since it's a question of making more profit, I will go ahead with purchasing CAD decision. So this is very important in a decision tree. What you're seeing here is called as a decision tree, which helps you to select the right decision that your company should proceed. So with this, we are finishing this particular chapter. So the quick summary of what we did. So design of goods or services, it's very important because it adds value to the customer. And as an operation manager, you should design systems so that you are able to get competitive advantage. And it should be done in such a way that there is a proper interaction between the various teams involved. So there's a cross functionality involved. And it's also important that the life cycle of the product is very important when you are deciding which method you want to go ahead with. And there are various techniques like the decision trees that can be used to select the various aspects of NPD, new product development. So with this, we are finishing this particular chapter. Thank you.